dear viewers. Welcome to our last technical session of webinar series Give Care, an interactive webinar for obstetrics and gynecology enthusiasts. In the past sessions, we had embarked on understanding NCD, polycystic ovarian syndrome. We see it is time now for us to consider the metabolic issues in the obstetrics and gynecology, the most common of which is GDM, gestational diabetes mellitus. As per the International Association of Diabetes and Pregnancy, GDM affects up to a quarter of pregnancies across the globe, and about 17% of pregnant women have some form of hyperglycemia. GDM is often responsible for 84% of them. GDM may pose a threat to outcome of pregnancy. The underlying factors of insulin resistance and glucose intolerance are challenging to be managed, and liver is often an ignored organ during the metabolic cascade. Let us hear it from our experts today. We have Dr. Mridula Arvind and Dr. Sujata Kadam, who will shed light on the metabolic disorders in obstetrics and gynecology with special reference to GDM, gestational diabetes mellitus.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Mridula. And as Shreyas is in, thank you for the nice words, Dr. Shreyas. So we will be discussing about gestational diabetes mellitus, which is a big problem that we are facing in these days as obstetricians. And it is actually a slowly rising epidemic which we all need to deal with. So we will be dealing with a practical, simplified practical approach to the screening, diagnosis and management.
We will start with today's topic of discussion, gestational diabetes mellitus. Next. So first is the definition of gestational diabetes mellitus. There is lots of confusion about this thing alone, like whether to classify high sugars detected in the first trimester as gestational diabetes, or only those high sugar values detected after 20 weeks should be called as gestational diabetes. Rest of the things are type 2 diabetes mellitus also. So this definition clarifies all the doubts. Okay, this is the definition for gestational diabetes. So, and the key word here is onset or first recognition. So anytime, irrespective of the trimester, irrespective of the gestational age, if high sugars are detected by any of the screening methods that you use, you have to call it as gestational diabetes mellitus. It is probable that some of those, especially those detected in the first trimester, can be type 2 diabetes mellitus or rarely type 1 diabetes mellitus, which is being recognized for the first time in pregnancy. But that also, for all practical reasons, we will consider as gestational diabetes, and retrospectively we will see, because gestational diabetes will in gestational diabetes, the sugars will come back to normal after delivery. In first time in type 2 and type 1, they continue to have a high blood sugars. And next thing is GDM. Why is it so important? Why it is so relevant, and that so many funding and so many guidelines are there for the detection of GDM? Because first thing is, like, India has got a very high prevalence of GDM. We have very huge number of diabetics in our country, and India is the diabetic capital of the world. So obviously we have a high prevalence of GDM also, and the prevalence of GDM in pregnancy is more in urban areas than in rural areas. And for a population like ours, prevalence ranging from, the prevalence in urban areas of GDM in India is from 8 to 14%, which is very, very significant. And GDM causes significant morbidity to the mother and the fetus. And not only that, it is not only the immediate complications it causes during the pregnancy to the mother and the fetus, but there are long-term complications as well. two generations are at risk, the mother and the fetus. The mother, the females with GDM are at high risk of, even when after delivery, immediately they recovers from the high sugars, they are at 50% higher risk of developing diabetes in their lifetime. And when we consider the fetus, not only the immediate short-term complications, children born to diabetic mothers are at higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes as adults. This is because of the fetal programming. When the babies are exposed to high sugars in the uterine environment, there is a programming happening and they become prone to type 2 diabetes mellitus as adults. So this is general, view into what are the short-term and the long-term complications or what are those caused by the gestational diabetes mellitus. I'm not elaborating, as everybody knows what are the short-term in the mother and in the fetus. Then I'm not going into detail into the physiology of gestational diabetes because the time doesn't allow me to go into it. It is a vast topic, all the physiological reasons of abnormalities which lead to gestational diabetes mellitus. In just I can say that, see, gestational diabetes, pregnancy itself is a diabetogenic condition, in the sense like all the hormones in pregnancy, starting from the first trimester, the human placental lactogen, progesterone, estrogen, and as the pregnancy advances, the amount of these hormones go on increasing. And at the end, there are abundant amount of steroids also in the body. All these hormones act again as insulin. So any pregnant lady is at risk of developing high sugars. But why doesn't it happen in a normal woman? That is because their pancreas, the beta cells of the pancreas, are able to mount an increased insulin response to these high sugars. That is what goes wrong in a person who develops GDM. They have an inherent defect in the or latency in the beta cells, so that they are not able to mount a increasing response from the beta cells to surmount the increasing sugars in the body, and they end up having high sugars. So this is what happens and leads to gestational diabetes mellitus. That's a very, very, minimal explanation. That is enough, I guess, for now. So, and we are coming to the most important part, okay, where there is lots of confusion. Still, it's an ongoing process, but there is definite criteria in place. There are definite, models operandi existing in India, which all of us should know without any doubts, which is best for the Indian scenario. So usually our doubts are whether you should do a universal or selective screening, whether it should be a one-step or two-step screening, which there are so many guidelines, we are confused as to what to follow. Whether to follow these IADPSG, the WHO, the American Diabetic Associated, or we should be follow the DIPSI. So all these confusions we need to answer to. So first question regarding what should be the norm, the universal or selective screening? Like as opposed to selective screening means screening only those population who are at risk of developing diabetes. So the high risk factors for diabetes are obesity, previous baby, big baby, other comorbidities like preeclampsia or autoimmune dysfunctions, a significant family history. And here comes the clinch. Why we opt for universal screening in India? Whether you belong to a race which is at risk for developing diabetes. So universal screening is recommended and is the norm that should be followed in India, because Indians as an ethnic group has a very high genetic predisposition for diabetes. As an ethnic community, we are 20% more at risk of developing diabetes. So universal screening is mandatory in India. There is no role for selective screening. So it's the same with the one step or two step. We want some screening protocol which will detect in one step, and we should be able to screen as well as diagnose in one step. Okay. So which guideline to follow? There is IADPSG, there is American Diabetic Association's guidelines, there is WHO guidelines, And then there is DIPSI. The most feasible and the most suited one for in Indian scenario is the DIPSI guideline. That is diabetes, which is done by the Diabetes in Pregnancy Study Group of India, because this is based on a prospective study done on an Indian population. So that gives the data about how Indians will respond, and that is the best one to do in our scenario. So coming to what does DIPSI say? So basically the DIPSI guidelines for GDM screening is a 75-gram OGTT, like what is advised by the World Health Organization. But the difference here is like, see, this is a point that we should all keep in mind. It is done irrespective of time of the last meal. DIPSI doesn't mandate that the woman should come on an empty stomach. Any pregnant woman is given 75 grams of glucose in 300 ml of water, which she should drink within a period of 5 to 10 minutes at first antenatal visit, whenever she comes for the first visit. And then there is no need for fasting sugars also. This also we have to keep in mind. All other guidelines like IADPSG, be it ADA, be it WHO, they ask for a fasting sample, that the woman has to come in a fasting state. But the DIPSI guidelines is an advantage in the sense that it can be done irrespective of the time of last meals. It doesn't mandate the woman has to come in fasting. And it makes sense also. See, you in an Indian population where we see maybe only once they may come to the antenatal checkup, then they may be visiting us after 2, 3, 4 months only. And if we ask them to come in fasting the next day, we may not even see them. And we will miss them and see them with an anomalous baby or so many complications later. So the goal is to catch as much as women as possible in their first antenatal visit. So irrespective of when they have had their last meal, we do this test. But one thing to note is, like, if the woman vomits within 30 minutes of having the sugars, we will have to repeat the test. Okay. So these are the cutoffs. And what are when will we say a person is GDM based on DIPSI guidelines? Okay. So we concentrate only on the 2-hour value. If the 2-hour value is more than 200, then there is no doubt it is diabetes. In pregnancy or outside pregnancy also, it is the same thing. It is diabetes. We classify them as gestational diabetes query. If supposedly if they come in the 3rd, 4th month, we may not be able to tell with all 100% guarantee, but we have to keep in mind that they may be in all probabilities type 2 diabetes, and we will have to keep a constant vigil more than a GDM on those people. But if the value is between 140 to 199, these people are classified as gestational diabetes mellitus. And there is another thing which most of us doesn't notice. If the 2-hour postprandial values come between 120 to 139, this group is also important. This is not normal. Only less than, if the postprandial value less than 120, that is what is a normal value. The value between 120 to 139, we call it decreased gestational glucose tolerance. These people with values between 120 to 139 in the due course can develop GDM at later stage. So how do you screen them? How do the universal testing for GDM goes ahead? So pregnant women, first visit, just at the first antenatal visit, and we prefer that this happens in the first trimester as early as possible in pregnancy. That is the norm. Okay, we give this 75-gram OGTT and we measure their values. If it is more than 140, it is positive and we manage them as GDM. But in case, what if it is negative? Do we leave her to be as no and not do the repeat the test again? No. We have to repeat the test again at 24 to 28 weeks. Why? Because that is a period of time when the pregnancy hormones are at the peak, and the patient who has not been detected in the first trimester, there is high chance some of them may, about they turn positive when these hormones, the anti-insulinic hormones are at their peak, and we can catch them in progress and follow with them. So if it is positive, 24 to 28 weeks, if it is, we can do it, and there should be a 4 weeks interval. Supposedly, the first antenatal visit was at 22 weeks, and we have done an OGTT. We should not do it again at 24 weeks. We have to give a minimum gap of 4 weeks. So do it at 26 weeks. So that is why the time range of 24 to 28 weeks is there. So if in this time period, if it is more than 140, we again manage them as GDM as per the guidelines. If it is negative, DIPSI and the National Health Mission tells us that no need to repeat it actually. But in all practical reasons, if you get a high risk woman, like at 20, she has done in the first trimester, 24 hours, weeks also she did, both were negative. But you see that she's having a big baby at around 32 weeks, you're seeing a big baby, the polyhydramnios is there, there is no harm in redoing the test. At 32 weeks, you see a high risk pregnancy, previous GDM and all, you go ahead, you can repeat it again at 32 weeks. So these are the cutoffs. And now we have screened and we have diagnosed. DIPSI is a screening as well as diagnostic test. There is no need for any other further testing to find out whether a pregnant lady is having gestational diabetes mellitus or no. So now we have found out that she is having gestational diabetes mellitus. How are we going to manage her? There are 4 main cornerstones of GDM management. First is medical nutrition therapy. Then there is physical activity, oral hypoglycemic agents, and insulin. See, most of the times all these things have to go hand in hand. Concept called the diabetic plate. This is a very easy way to tell them how your main meal should look. So if you take a plate, half of the plate, 50% of the plate should contain vegetables. And they're like, not fruits, it is vegetable. Because they have got high fiber content, they fill up the stomach, decrease the hunger pangs. 25% should be carbohydrates and 25%. So you can show a plate. 1/4 of the plate should contain proteins. For non-vegetarians, you can include ragi, you can include all the pulses, legumes, soya, and all those things. Meat is a better source. Avoid red meat. Stick to chicken, which is because the fat content is low. You need to contain the fat also in GDM. And 25, only 1/4 of your plate should be rice. It is not possible for everybody to eat brown rice and the quinoa or something like that. So just 20. This is an easier way to pass the message to them. This I have already shown the level of the energy requirement according to the work and according to the weight of the person. Then comes, so you tell them about the medical nutrition therapy. Patient education is very, very important. I can't put enough stress on it. Until unless the patient knows about this, we won't be able to achieve anything. Then comes physical activity. So it is generally advised in pregnancy, more so important in diabetics. There should be a planned physical activity, 30 minutes per day. Physical activity, how does it help? Physical activity improves the metabolic control, reduces the insulin resistance, increases the insulin production, reduces the cardiovascular risk, improve weight control, and it improves overall well-being. And they have to fetal activity, they should keep a watch, and if they are on insulin, they have to see the blood glucose before and after the exercise. Then comes oral hypoglycemic agents. Earlier, if the medical, like say 5 years or 6 years back, if you say the patient has failed in medical nutrition therapy and physical activity to control the sugars, you directly used to go to insulin. Now the scene has changed. The government, FDA have approved certain OHAs or oral hypoglycemic agents for the management of gestational diabetes mellitus. 2 of them are metformin and glyburide, but the most commonly used one is metformin because it It doesn't have any teratogenic effect, but still you usually start it only after 20 weeks of pregnancy. Before 20 weeks, if the with medical nutrition therapy the sugars are not under control, or the patient comes for very high sugars like more than 200, then you have to start with insulin first hand only. You won't wait for MNT. So if the woman's blood sugar is not controlled with the maximum daily dose of metformin, that is maximum daily dose of metformin that you can give is 2 gram, that is 500 milligram QID. That's a maximum dose, but usually we give BD, 500 milligram BD, then we increase to 1 gram BD. Then that will be the maximum dose. So with 1 gram BD also sugars are not coming under control. There is no other way if you have to start insulin. Insulin therapy. So when do we start insulin? When blood glucose targets cannot be reached by medical nutrition therapy and oral hypoglycemic agents. Insulin requirements increase throughout the pregnancy, and this is the required units into how many international units of human insulin is needed. In first trimester, it is easy to remember. It increases by 0.1 increments in each trimester. So till 18 weeks, it is 0.7 units per kilogram per day. During 18 to 26 weeks, it is 0.8 units per kilogram per day. 0.9 units during between 26 to 36 weeks, and from 36 weeks to delivery, you need 1 unit per kg per day. Okay, but there are you can't just calculate this dose and just start on a pregnant woman all on a sudden, because during pregnancy some people can be very sensitive to insulin. So you always start in a stepwise manner, which I have shown in the next chart. And what kind of insulin, that is also important. What insulin is recommended in pregnancy according to Government of India, according to DIPSI, according to FOXI, is human insulin premix. It contains regular insulin and non-protamine Hagon, that is the intermediate insulin, in the fixed ratio of 30 to 70. It comes as Mixtard 30-70. Okay, that is what is recommended, but it is not a hard and fast rule. See, so it is very easy to say we can use only 32 Mixtard, but it is not. Sometimes you just can't achieve controls by that, and we will have to add. But what all insulins are safe in pregnancy? Human regular insulin is safe. Then you can have the Aspart and Lispro, which are ultra short acting insulins, which will cater to the postprandial race. I'm not going into the details of it because the topic is very vast. So this is a flowchart depicting how you manage a pregnant woman with GDM. So pregnant woman with GDM, you educate them and you give medical nutrition therapy and physical exercise. And for how long will you do it forever, 1 month, 2 months? No, you try it only for 2 weeks, and then you again recheck the postprandial sugars, 2-hour postprandial sugars, and see the values. If it is less than 120 milligram per deciliter, then you continue the MNT and physical exercise. You have to repeat this test. If it is less than 120 also, it doesn't mean that you need not test them again. You have to repeat every 2 weeks, but not OGTT. Once she is diagnosed as GDM, there is no need for any OGTT. You need to do FBS and postprandial sugars. So mainly the postprandial sugars. So even if it is less than 120, you continue with the medical nutrition therapy and physical exercise, but monitor the 2-hour postprandial sugars every 2 weeks in the second trimester and weekly during the third trimester. But on the other case, with medical nutrition therapy and physical exercise for 2 weeks also, if the sugars are not coming under control, you can start either oral anti-diabetic, that is OHA and metformin, as I have told earlier. And it can be stepwise depending upon what is the period of pregnancy. See, the patient and the values of the sugars are very high, not like in the levels of 200, 250, there is no point in giving metformin. Metformin can be an add-on, but in that scenario, we have to cater to the sugar values and the period of pregnancy also. To a patient is 34 weeks and sugars are very high, we can't sit there giving metformin, because most important thing here to remember is like the glycemic control is the single most important thing which which has the causation with the baby's comorbidities. See, congenital anomalies and all the things is not a complication of GDM. Congenital anomalies and such things are associated with type 2 diabetes mellitus. It is not associated with GDM, but the most important fetal comorbidity with GDM, which is scary for an obstetrician, is like stillbirth, especially at term. So it is paramount that we keep the sugar at a stringent control. Okay, so we all should know what are the glycemic targets. We have started the more treatment. The patient should also know, and we should also know what are we looking at, what are we trying to achieve. We should achieve a fasting glucose we should maintain a fasting glucose of less than 95 milligram per deciliter. 1 hour postprandial should be less than 140 milligram per deciliter. 2 hour postprandial should be less than 120 milligram per deciliter. And during labor and delivery, we should achieve a target blood glucose of 72 to 126 milligram per deciliter. And at the same time, we should avoid hypoglycemia. Sugar levels less than 70 milligram at any point of time is hypoglycemia. The patients as well as the attenders should be educated regarding this. So the take-home points are like gestational diabetes is a slow rising epidemic with fetal, maternal and social implication. Risk stratification and screening is essential in all pregnant women. Stringent glycemic targets to be adhered to for optimal maternal and fetal outcome. Long-term follow-up of the mother and baby is essential. So as doctors, our motto should be aggressive screening, accurate diagnosis, systematic management and diligent follow-up of the patient. That is in short about GD. Thank you very much.
Let's now hear from Dr. Sujata Kadam for the Ayurvedic concepts of GDM. Dr. Sujata Kadam is the professor and head department of PG studies of Prasuti Tantra and Stri Roga, and also the dean of PG studies of All India Institute of Ayurveda, New Delhi.
Namaskar to all of you. In this session, I welcome you all. And in this session, we are going to discuss about the metabolic disorders in pregnancy, mainly focused on diabetes mellitus, gestational diabetes mellitus. So let us start. Namaskar. Metabolic disorders in pregnancy, we are going to discuss in this session. All of you know that what is metabolism. The metabolism is process used to make energy from whatever food we are taking, and the food we are taking are in the forms of carbohydrate, proteins and fats, and which convert into sugar and acid, what is the body fluid required for body. And when this metabolism get disturbed, it is called as metabolic disorders. As per Ayurveda, this is the Jatharagni and Dhatuvagni Vikruti both, because the metabolism mainly, as we all know, that is, it is totally responsible on the status of what is the Agni of that particular person. So in this metabolic disorders or metabolic syndrome comprises many components like just diabetes mellitus, hyperlipidemia, obesity, hypothyroidism, etc. But mainly we are going to focus on gestational diabetes mellitus. According to Ayurveda, the diabetes mellitus is a methodrushti janya vyadhi, and the additional derangement of mansa, kleda, rasa, rakta, majja, shukra, etc. also there. So the treatment part mainly focused on correction of methodrushti, which is responsible for further pathophysiology of diabetes. When we look as a gestational diabetes mellitus, we can say it is like a kapash type of prameha or kapha pradhan prameha. In pregnancy, already there is a Kleda Pradhan Avastha, and Kleda Vriddhi is more, and it turns out to be, and other responsible factors, it turns out to be a gestational diabetes mellitus. Are there any references directly which we can correlate with the gestational diabetes or GDM? We can get some references and which we can correlate with the gestational diabetes. In Bhaishya Ratnavali, that it is said that it is mentioned in the text that excessive use of Ati Madhur, Ati Guru, Paryushut Ahar, Ati Bhojan can lead to Ojomeha in Garbhini. And yes, when pregnant woman consumes the diet which is Madhura in for the rasa, and when she gets excessive sleep, the child, the fetus or the child will suffer from the prameha, ati stula, mukha, and etc. So this reference we will get when it is related to Garbhini diet or ahar or vihar. Then Acharya Sushruta has mentioned Garbha Vriddhi, which can be correlated with microsomnia or large for dead fetus. That is Jatarabhi Vriddhi, which is quoted in Sutrasthan. So these are some references which we can correlate with the gestational diabetes, that is microsomnia in the fetus and Atisveta Vriddhi, Pravritti also. So in Vaishya Ratnavali, in Sushruta, in Charaka, there are some references which can be correlate with the gestational diabetes, but not such a directly Garbhopadrava is mentioned anywhere in our Samhitas. Now, when we look into the treatment part or management part, prevention is the core of Ayurveda management, and like that, we must prevent the diabetes, gestational diabetes, before pregnancy. That means we should take care of all the things which can prevent a gestational diabetes to be occurred during the pregnancy. And mainly focus is on preconceptional care, where we can say that yes, we can enlist some couple which are having a high risk factors, which the lady can develop gestational diabetes afterwards. Such couple we can select and we can give the preconceptional panchakarma measures or dietary advices or behavioral advices to prevent the gestational diabetes. So the prevention Garbhadana Sanskara or preconceptional counseling and care, it is very much necessary. And early screening of the risk factors. If the patient conceives and comes to you, then early screening is very much necessary. Before pregnancy, preconceptional care, we can take care of many things. But many a times patient visits us after the pregnancy occurs, and the early screening is very much necessary. Such cases which are having a maternal age is more, increased maternal age, obesity, positive family history, or GDM in previous pregnancy, stillbirths in previous pregnancy. These are the cases we should screen for diabetes. And early screening, early intervention gives a very good results for any of the treatment, whether it is Ayurveda or conventional medicine. And what is the management according to Ayurveda? The management definitely depends on what are the blood sugar levels of that particular patient and the diet modifications throughout the pregnancy. The Masanumasik Pathya, which is described for the pregnancy, what changes should be done in Masanumasik Pathya if the patient is having diabetes mellitus. And yes, exercise, what type of exercise we can advise and what type of medicine we can give to such cases. As we all know that GTT is mandatory nowadays for every pregnant lady, and if the GTT is not possible, you can go for only BSL fasting PP. but GTT should be done for every case. If the BSL level, fasting levels are 90 to 105 and PP 120 to 130, we can use the diet, lifestyle modifications and Ayurveda drugs. These cases are considered, we can consider these cases as safe, and we can go with the Ayurveda management. Yes, but the strict sugar level monitoring is very much necessary, because sometimes the sugar levels make it aggravated as the pregnancy advances. So whether you are going to give Ayurveda management or conventional management, the blood sugar monitoring is very crucial part of this gestational diabetes treatment. If the BSL is below 90 and PP fasting below 90 and PP below 120, then but the patient is having the symptoms of gestational diabetes, then you can also intervene with the Ayurveda managements. What could be the Ayurveda management? So what the treatment which is very famous, many obstetricians are using this treatment for managing GDM, that is Nisha Amalaki. 1 gram dose is sufficient, because the Nisha should be used carefully during pregnancy. So Nisha Amalaki combination we can give. Guduchi Swarasa, yes. Sarvamehara Kashai, we can advise 20 ml BD to GDM cases. What are the other medicines that can be advised? Like Daru Haridra, Devdaru, Triphala, Musta in equal amount, and the Kwath can be given, or if the Kwath is not possible, you can use the Churna form also. Amalaki Swaras and Haridra Kalka with honey, it is described in Charak Chikitsa. That can also be advised to a pregnant lady. Palatrikadi Kwath, Murva Gokshur Kwath with honey. Daru Haridra for all type of prameha is advised in Charak. That also can be advised to a pregnant lady. But Haridra and Daru Haridra should be used with caution, because these are Haridra is Ushna. So the higher quantity can create some problems. So the low dose we can use, like Nisha Amalaki 1 gram BD, that can be used. And yes, BSL monitoring should be very meticulous. Guduchi, yes, we can use judiciously in pregnancy in treating GDM. Udakapana is advised in Prameha Rogi, like Sarodaka, that is Vijay Sar, and the Udaka prepared from Vijay Sar can be used throughout the day for drinking. That is very beneficial to lower down the sugar, and Kusha Udaka also can be advised. Yes, Guduchi Sattva, Shatavari Swaras, then Triphala Churna, Haritaki Churna, Amalaki Swaras, these all can be used as per the patient's need and the symptoms, whatever symptoms she is having. And if the patient is case of GDM and there is a UGR also, you can use the Shatavari Swaras. Like this, you can use the combination of drug, and we can treat a GDM up to certain level with such a combinations. Laghu Malni Vasanta or Vasanta Kusmakar is a very great combination. Vasanta Kusmakar is a very great kalpa, what you can say, for treating GDM. But you cannot prescribe the throughout the pregnancy what are rasa aushadhis. So if we give for 21 days, gap of 21 days is necessary, then again you can start with the next 21 days. So with the gap, we can judiciously use the Vasanta Kusumakar Kalpa like drug. This will help in Garbhoposhana also, to lower down the symptoms of GDM. And yes, this will help in all aspect of pregnancy. Rasayan drug, it is very good rasayan. Sometimes the patient is having related symptoms to GDM like UTI, Ajirna Agni Mandya, some vaginal infections or gastrointestinal symptoms. So if she is a case of UTI, Chandraprabhavati, you can prescribe, or Sarvamehar Kasha, also useful in UTI. If Agnimandya and Ajirna is associated with GDM, then Palatrikada Kasha helps very nicely with such cases. Vaginal infections, you can use the Panchavalkal or Triphala Kashaya for Bahya Yoni Prakshalan and Abhyantar Yoni Pratisaran. You can use Prakshalan in Yoni Dhavan should not be used during pregnancy because forceful this quath injection in vagina can spread the upward infection. So Pratisaran you can do. That means soak down the vagina with such quath like Triphala Kashaya or Panchavalkal Kashaya. If the patient is having gastrointestinal symptoms, then Pravar Panchamrut Sarvamehar Kashaya, that also is useful. If the patient is on insulin, if with your treatment BSL worsens, that is PP to if above 200, then you can start switch over to the insulin. And if the patient is already on insulin, if you want to taper down the dose of insulin with the Ayurveda drugs, whatever the mentioned drugs you can advise, and yes, under close observation, we can reduce the dose of insulin, or we can even stop the insulin with the close monitoring. Dietary interventions, yes, it is very necessary to prescribe the diet to such cases. So every 2-hour diet or every 2-hour supplement, some supplement in the form, any form, whichever suitable in the pregnancy, that we can advise. This chart I have given whatever we discussed when we conducted one workshop here at All India Institute of Ayurveda for GDM management. So this we chop out the diet like at 8 a.m. multigrain roti, egg can be given, and veg paratha, pulka with chutney. This type of roti, this type of advice you can give. Cow's milk without sugar or soups of various vegetables, that can be given at 10:30 a.m. Then lunch, then again one fruit. In lunch, buttermilk should be added at lunchtime. And yes, this diet chart can be followed to lower down or to control the BSL in GDM cases. Monthly dietary regimen, yes, that should be advised, but in some months, the alteration should be done. Like in 4th month and 5th month, curd, that should be should not be given, because that is, as it is a Abhishandi and it is not a pathya for GDM cases. So that curd we can avoid. Then butter in less quantity, or butter can also be avoided. Instead of that, we can advise the ghee. So such alterations in month-wise regime should be done. Like in 7th month, sweetened curd is advised, that should not be given. Or in 6 months also, the curd should not be given. The grita with medicated with gokshur, that can be advised in the 6 months. So some sort of modification we have to do in the monthly regime. And yes, diet is very necessary modification, and with that we can take the advantage of yoga during pregnancy to lower down the BSL levels, or to increase the digestive capacity or digestive power, what we can say, Agni of the patients. So some exercise we can advise, like lower limb relaxation, upper limb relaxation, wrist bending, elbow rotation, wrist rotation, shoulder rotation, like things she can do very nicely. Then Griva Sanchala, neck movements. Then yes, breathing exercise like Anulom Vilom and Bhramari Pranayam, that also can be used. And asana, and this is first trimester, we can use only these movements. And some asanas in first and second trimester you can use, which will increase the pelvic blood flow and warm-up exercises you can add in this regular yoga practice. Those asanas which causes pelvic relaxation, that should be added in the third trimester. And the asanas we support or which we advise to the GDM cases, that is sitting posture, Purna Asana, Vajrasana and Siddhasana. Then supine posture, Matsya Kridasana, Parivartit Shavasana. This you can advise to the patients, which she can do daily when with other exercises also. Time of delivery, when we are treating the GDM cases with close monitoring of blood sugar levels and other symptoms, we should focus on the fetal growth also. That means sometimes it can lead to IUGR also. Microsomnia is very common, but still in some cases IUGR also can be seen. So the focus on fetal growth or fetal parameters assessments should be very meticulous. And yes, ACOG has not recommended any evidence-based recommendation for real time of delivery. What should be the real time of delivery in such a cases? Many obstetricians prefer early delivery because full-term IUDs also noted with the GDM cases. So early induction is preferred by many obstetricians, but proper time of induction, whatever is chosen, if the BSL is in control, that can be done at the 39 to 40 weeks. And patients with good glycemic control and who do not require insulin may wait for spontaneous onset of labor. So whatever the onset of labor, we can wait for if everything is in control. Vaginal delivery is to be allowed after proper assessment of pelvic adequacy. Because of microsomnia, we should assess pelvic very properly, and with the proper assessment of pelvic, we can allow a vaginal delivery. If there is a CPD, that means fetus is overweight, so you can straight away go for cesarean section with controlled sugar levels. Elective delivery is considered in patient requiring insulin or both complications at around 38 weeks. So this can be the whole management of GDM. Thank you very much. And yes, this is a little bit, I think obstetricians little bit hesitate in treating GDM cases with Ayurveda management, but with very good observation of VSL and supplementation of diet, exercise and drugs, we can treat their GDM with Ayurveda also. So thank you very much for a patient's hearing. Thanks a lot.
It is time now for you to post your queries. Post them below in the comment section of the YouTube channel of Celebrity Doctor. Our resource person will answer them live in our next live session. Meanwhile, do not forget to like, subscribe and share the YouTube channel of Celebrity Doctor, and do hit the bell icon so that you would be notified if something informative has been shared in the channel. So let's Eve care.